So we'll begin with the concept of the people. Well, when you have the concept of the people, as my father is fond of saying, my dad has very good G, basically there comes into being certain things. They eventually become spirit forms at their higher states, but in this beginning they'll start with just a question, actually a few questions, which is who, what, where, when, and how. The classic questions, right? And as we all know, these questions cause you to sort of move forward in a story, in anything you do in conversation. It's questions that make the conversation sort of tumble forward in a lot of ways. So that highlights the very active nature of Xyy and Xyy. Now, what I'm thinking needs to be done here is to highlight exactly what caring means in this context, because anytime an energetic use of attention or exertion happens, you could say that's a way of caring. Does that make sense? So we're going to kind of sort of like give you the specific flavor of caring we refer to with Xyy. In order to do that, I'm going to compare it to some of the other powers to explain why they don't have this. Now, the two that are very easy are obviously Ni and Vi. They are known, they're famous, they are renowned for their carefreeness. Okay, so that's obvious. Now, where it's less clear would be, for example, between Xyy and Xyy, the actual two discernment powers. Now, Xyy is known for having the signal being bracing, as opposed to the caring of Xyy. But in reality, similar to perfection is a kind of harmony, and harmony is a kind of perfection, the people is a kind of system. And when you think about it in certain ways, the system is a kind of organism or people. So the dynamics, they overlap, but when a person cares about shifts in Xyy dynamics, the care of Xyy goes towards the system. So thus you could say there is care in that way, but we're going to refine the use of caring specifically in this podler context as caring about humans. Because a Xyy person, when they notice a shift in the dynamics of Xyy, are going to have a great amount of their psyche charged up, agitated, and they will exert efforts to do it. They clearly are paying a lot of attention, and they care how it goes, and they exert energies to make it go a certain way. But that's not related necessarily to the people. They work from the system, and the system will, in the end, make the people secure. That's their faith, logic-based first. As opposed to the faith that if the peoples are taken care of, then the systems will work out as a side benefit of that. Okay, so that kind of explains why both these powers will both be very attentive and engaged and so forth. But when you're attentive and engaged to, for example, the moving of the stock market and the scheduling of shipping, imports, and exports, that tends to come off as bracing when you get that phone call. Imagine a phone call that is thinking about that. So it cares, but you won't feel necessarily caring, you might feel more bracing, and we'll have a whole video on that. As opposed to shift in dynamics that relate to people, and the person is attentive and concerned about that quantity, that dynamic shifting. Okay. Finally, back here, and this is very relevant to Xyy and Xyy, are the agendas that motivate them. So, for example, I am a Nai Xyy, and I can assure you that my Nai cares. It cares a lot. But it needs, as Vi does, a driver in order to do it. So even if, for example, you have Vi and Xyy, Vi and Nai, they may be very keenly interested in something, but that interest will inherently make them remove. So this interest will remove itself, and the Xyy actually has a different dynamic that it is going for that won't feel like caring, although you could interpret that way. So before I get sliced and diced by semantics people out there of does everyone care, and yes, so we're going to separate caring in this sense, in this instance, from the overall just attentiveness, awareness, concern for the change of things, because in that sense every pod power cares a tremendous amount about the concept it's in charge of. Xyy, the concept it's in charge of, is caring about people. So that's, in this instance, we're going to refer that to that specific kind of caring, because that will manifest in the face, because these distinct signal filmings are supposed to help aid you in mojo reading and understanding the powers. So it will be seen as caring because it is aware of you, and you, and you. That's why, because what it is caring about will be you, as opposed to caring about a system you are on or caring about something else that is tangentially connected to you. The care is specifically about you. So that's why you'll feel it when you are reading that kind of person. Like myself, I care how this goes. It's also why those who have Xyy have the aware mouth, because they care about what they're doing and how it affects the people. They're aware of a symbiotic relationship between anyone who'll be around them, not just visually watching them, but just they're in their life. All their actions actually relate to the collective in that way. And that brings up the first of the power flows, which is the personal connection, sense of community. In fact, I'm going to go back to those questions because that's going to help give you the flavor of that sense of community, that personal connection. What is that? It is the what. It is the who, the why, the how. And what does that mean? It means that, for me, example, I'm a Xyy user. It's on my strong side. It's my tandem power, one of my top two. That's my discernment framework. It's the way I understand everything. So for me, it's the most fundamental of structures to ask, what am I? And I guess all the pod powers ask that question in their own way. So in the way that Xyy asks it and gets the answer back is, I know myself by my people. This is a very noble way to know oneself. It's important to note that Xyy has incredible powers for good. It can also be used really, really lamely. It has a lot to do with overall development, and particularly what powers they're using to push, what agenda they are pushing with that Xyy, and how well that's developed. So there's a great deal of range. So right now I'm going to talk about just the power itself and the nobler side, which is how it's intended to be. So in a noble sense, you want to know with Xyy, who am I part of? What are these people? Are these wave riders? All humans come with a heroic script. Xyy is very aware of the role, the conduct of heroic roles, role playing. So it's concerned about what roles there are to be played, which ones are better than others, and which ones it then therefore chooses to play or to enact, or to embody, might be a better way. So when you ask yourself, being a Xyy user, and anyone who has Xyy as well, but it's very just prominent for anyone who has it on their strong side, it'll be a distinct signal because it's inescapable. The concept of, if I am the son, daughter, brother, sister, distant relative, whatever, member of the same club, whatever you want to call that, there is an association. It should be a heroic association. So I need to know what these people are that I do and how they do it, because then I'll know how to be a hero. It's very important to Xyy. It needs to know what role it's meant to play. This will relate also to its inspirational pairing with Xyy and the poignancy that helps teach it. But it starts with its own understanding, which is that I'm meant to be a hero, and so I need to know how that is manifested, how that is acted out by my people. My people will show me the way that it is to be done, and therefore, similar to Xyy, it'll come off differently. It's not so much objectively ranking oriented in a logical, numerical way, but it very much cares about heroic ranking, if it makes sense. Sort of like which roles are considered to be more heroic than others, and I want to have those. So what do I need to do, and what do other people who are with me need to do? Because that keeps bringing back another part of that, the sense of community. My development as a hero, my role as a hero, is intrinsically linked to two things. Well, really three things. What is the development of my people? How are they heroically? Are they intellectually, emotionally, financially? Are they okay? Could they be more okay? So there's that well-being, and then within that, where am I? Am I a leader? Am I a victim? Am I someone who's learning the ropes of that? So basically, you have a community and the state of it, and then myself in it, and everyone else. Everyone else can be in that because they are part of the people, and therefore that whole conglomerate is a certain way. It's a collective way of that people. And then everyone in there, they have a role in it, and also how well they are helping the harmony of that collective way. Are they aiding it, or are they becoming a villain to it? And the next question is why? That's going to point back to the agenda. Why are my people this way? You can answer that with speculation of Xyy, or also with the memories of Xyy. But the Xyy will have been taught by some sort of perception the way the people are. And it needs to have that information because it's going to, from that context, decide its role. I mentioned that already. The second part, the role of everyone else in that concept of the people. And third, the role of everything outside of that. And already you can see the intense care going on here. I'm going to care about my conduct because my conduct, from the Xyy way of thinking, determines my storyline role. The way if I act brave, then I am a brave person, and so that has this position in the storyline. I want to have that position, so I want to act in that way. Act as if. So Xyy does that, it acts as if. So by knowing how the people are, it finds hopefully heroic roles and attempts to emulate them, as well as helping others to emulate that and expecting others to emulate that. Again, you're notice the care. And this will come out in the facial expressions and constantly, even when those who have Xyy go inside for their subjective powers. The face is different than those who don't have it. And that's because with Xyy, there's an awareness that, if it's when you're conscious forward particularly, that anything coming in, whether it be V or Ni outer perceptions, whether it be memories or speculations or discernments that do not move, this is all going to be keenly relevant to the success and the ongoing activities of the people. So there's an attentiveness to anything that's going to affect the people. Now, this concept, I'm going to spend a little time here before I move on, but it's very important because it flavors everything else. This can be very small. This can be, as mentioned before, just a family or just a pair. Sometimes it can even be just a lone person and their concept of the other or nature or spirituality or the divine acting as that other person. But there's a relationship, a sense of duty. And this is where things like the loyalty and other things come in, is that I am measured. It is a discernment power. I am measured by my people themselves. That's important. Hence why anyone's been around Xyy users knows that if they don't think you're doing something the right way for the way things are done around here, they will start to move you and persuade you and try to get you to change. And that's because it affects them. The bubble of the people is directly related to themselves, and it defines what is outside the bubble. And so anything coming in, there's going to be these things that are of high interest to Xyy. Is this activity, person, event, whatever, is it friendly to my people? Is it unfriendly to my people? Within the people, are these individuals within the people, are they doing it right? Are they going to help the heroic bubble we're going here get larger? Or are they actually going to be something that's lessening the bubble? Sometimes that's going to happen. It mentioned the Xyy power flow and Xyy power flow. There is an acceptance that there will be some factionary forces, both between the bubble of the people and outside, and also within the bubble. There will be some who are doing it better. They are the luminaries of the people, and there are those who are actually not doing right. They're actually, even though they started among the people, they're being villainous to the people. And so there's the concept that also can be, that there is the collective of the people, but not everyone is going to be behaving to the most idealistic or harmonious way, that will actually have to be strived for in an active way, in a beginning, middle, end, in a closure-oriented, in a structured way. That's how you can assure that. So right there again, you're seeing the left brain nature. That's another thing. I'll contrast Xyy also with Xyy. When Xyy is affected by things, with its gut reactions, with its essence reading, with its empathy, it cares a lot. But the caring will tend to be inward, which tends to be seen or perceived by other people or read as poignancy. So they're caring, but in such an internal way that gives off poignancy. But the caring of the Xyy being left brain and objective, it's going to go outward. and start trying to ask questions and move things and make things go in the appropriate places, make people act in the appropriate ways. So the caring we're talking about, and this is why you'll read it and why it's constant, is a care in the behavior of all people. We'll call them the people and other people, but both. Xyy wants to know what the conduct is, because is that conduct friendly to us? Are they giving out conduct from their bubble that shows they are friendly to our people? Could they actually become people who are friends of the people? Could they eventually become part of the people? That's judged by their conduct, by actually how they do things. This gets into rituals and things so forth. So Xyy users in the conscious powers, they'll be noting this when they're talking to people, when they're in an environment. Whether they know it that they're doing it or not, they're wired to note the culture of a place, how it's going, how they do things here. Does that groove with their sense of community, their sense of culture? So that's where you're seeing the Xyy bubble of the people for one Xyy user as they interact with the Xyy bubble of other people. And that's how they do it. They relate that to their own rituals, their own culture, and then that lets them know how to interact with them, and if this is a culture that they agree with, that is something that is heroic. Because they can take in information. They can take more information in from me and V, and also from Xyy and Vi. The question is, similar to Xyy being like resonating, they will notice if a heroic motif happens. If so, they will often update more Vi or more Xyy or more Ni or more V based on the fact that they're observing what looks like a human-based, a personified-based, remember there's 3 different spirit forms, a people-based spirit form motif is happening, either heroic or villainous, comedic or tragic, and so there is an impetus to act accordingly. Does that sound pretty good there? I'm gonna go now a little more specific, but I just want to kind of set the scene for why it cares, how it be felt, and how you differentiate that from other powers like Xyy or Xyy that could be perceived very much so as caring. They very much do care, but not in this kind of way, and you won't read it as such. The kind of care of Xyy, you'll read as bracing once you're trained, and the caring of Xyy, you'll read as poignancy once you are trained. Okay, but the caring of Xyy kind of feels like caring when they actually do it to you. If that makes sense. Okay, so we'll start with we have the personal connection, sense of community. We kind of touched on that already. We'll now get into social awareness, personal consideration. So as these interpersonal forces, these factionary forces of humans are going backwards and forwards, some friendly, some unfriendly, there is a noticing of this. Xyy basically rates how the environment is going, and that's a collective thing. So a Xyy user is going to go in any environment and in this way, in a structured way, different than Xyy, rate how this environment's doing it. And also note how it's being done, because there are certain things that Xyy will want to do. It will want to be noble, courteous, polite, strong, to show that it comes from a noble way. Now Xyy users can often get into a contest of what that is, but in the noblest sense, Xyy users are actually attempting to enact the noble way. So when they come into a place where they know it or don't know it, they're going to see how it's happening. And then from there, that will tell them how to act. In fact, it will compel them to act. This very much relates to the concept we're talking about, destiny, as opposed to the concept of a sense of destiny. Xyy users are going to have perpetual senses of destiny in a certain way, or also a sense of tradition, whether it's Vi or Xyy, as they watch various humanistic motifs enact in front of them. So let's say a person walks up to a door, and they are looking. To a Xyy user, this specifically means, okay, to a Xyy user, this may note that this is a person who's trying to see what's going on inside. That's true, that's logically true. The Xyy is going to take the point of view of, this person is looking in there, they must want something, what do they need? It will take a different tact of that, if that makes sense. If the person is male or female, if they are young or old, if they are known to the person or not known, this will flip different triggers in the Xyy. And this is why Xyy is ironically matched with Xyy. Let's say, for example, there's a person who's throwing energies at you that don't relate to you or your people. Xyy, that's why Xyy is there to go, wait a minute, this does not relate to us, and pulls away, because Xyy is going to be hit by all those things that are etiquette cues. So if you see, for my example, when I see someone walk up to a door and looking in sort of quizzical, if they are within what I'm going to call my Xyy zone, and that zone differs from different people based on where it is in their hierarchy and how powerful they've developed it, and also their mood that day and so forth. But for anyone who has Xyy consciously, there is going to be a tickle of, this is a human in the role of lost person. It's very particular. And I'm within that zone. So that makes me, puts me into, and energy happens to me. I am person watching lost person. What do? Well, that can depend on different memes you had or different speculations or your own ideas, but there is a rule, there's a code. This gets into code of conduct. My people, they do a certain thing when they watch someone quizzically looking in a window like they don't know quite what's going on or what they're seeing inside, and I am there. There are ways we do it if I know what's inside of that building. There are ways if I don't know. Does that make sense? These are very structured ways of me deciding, well, I'll make this very analytical. It's not this analytical, but it is this structured. That person drops something. They are within 100 yards of me. I shouldn't go over. Not only am I not obligated to, it's weird. Crossing 100 yards to pick up groceries that someone dropped from 100 yards away, it's weird. That's not how people do it. If I did it, I would weird them out. Does that mean Xyy thinks in this way? Someone drops groceries or something and they are 10 feet away from me. I really need to do that, or it's really weird that I do not. Does that make sense? Because if you think about it, if that's a kind of a thing, it's a structure. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but it is. There's like a rule for that. The way within 10 feet, someone drops something, you should at least say something. You got that? Are you okay? If not, physically help. If it's 100 yards away, even though you can visibly see it, even if you're like in a football field and you're like 50 yards away, and it's like clear as day. So you can clearly visibly see the person dropping it. They can see you. Still, I think we all know this. You just act like you didn't see it and keep on walking, because that's really far away for you to walk over. You can't be doing it your entire life. People can't work like that. Also, that person would be like, it's weirder and takes more energy to explain I'm cool that I dropped my keys than you help me to pick up my dropped keys. Does that make sense? And so Xyy knows that there are certain ways it works for humans, that it's cooler or not cooler. This has a lot of change based on development and the agenda they're doing. But you see it in a simple sense. Okay, but that can get very, very nuanced to inviting people for events, who gets invited, who doesn't, how you invite it, how do you begin an event, how do you close it. Whether you know it or not, there are ways things are done. You can agree with them or not agree with them, but there are, for example, at the end of an evening, there is the convention in certain countries of hugging, in certain other countries of shaking hands. Whatever it is, there's a closing ritual. That is a universal ritual that applies to all people in an objective way. That's the realm of Xyy. This is not the authenticity, which is awesome, of Xyy in a personal way. This is a collective authenticity, which is a collective value of humans have to have closure at the end of events. So therefore there needs to be a way of it. And that's what Xyy does. There's all sorts of things, particularly relating to rituals that people do, that are important to them. Death rituals, birthing rituals, dating rituals, work rituals, play rituals, eating, right? What utensils do you use? Do you say prayers before? Do you hug your family before? Does dessert come first, after? It sounds funny, but this says so much because it defines how the people do it. So Xyy is very much concerned with that and how it affects people. For example, dessert before, after. If the people allow dessert before, then these are going to be more likely people who are creative, free-thinking, go with the flow, and sort of more reward first and work after, which is a method of getting through life that does work. It depends if you agree with that and it's right for your mojo and a host of other things. However, it could be taken on, this is for example where Xyy very much needs pod layer, it could be taken on that that's the way all people should do it. But maybe some people prefer to actually have the protein first and then go to dessert stuff after they had those nutritional things. It works for the way they live their life. And of course, everything in between. Whether you know or not, there is a certain stigma or association. Stigma is a bad word, and that can be the negative side of Xyy. But the positive side is just association. There's an association of that. So, for example, there's association with extra intimacy at the end of get-togethers with friends, lovers, family, everything. So I think everyone knows this. If you are going to try to bridge between yourself and another person, between your family, another family, your crew, another crew, your tribe, another tribe, it's good to time stuff, Xy's very good at this, at closing rituals. Because everyone shakes hands anyway, or they hug anyway, or they exchange gifts or pleasantries. So if you want to make a extra strong connection, that is a structured part of human interaction that is a peak point. If you want to, like, you know what, we don't talk enough, we should call more. It's good to time that at those certain moments. Let's say you're with someone and there's 10 people in the room, and now there's much less people in the room. Maybe there's just you and another person, or you and one or two other people, and so the alchemy is very specific. Now, technically, nothing's actually changed. So in a technical sense, a logical sense, something's changed, and even for Xyy, outside dynamics, they are still at equilibrium, but the dynamics has changed because it's different. Maybe those 3 people who were left over really like each other, or maybe they don't. That will affect Xyy, because now the Xyy has changed. The various composition of this people. That's important. The concept of the people changes from moment to moment. Like, for example, I'm here right now. If one of these 2 individuals here is to get up and to leave, the people have changed. It's now a 2-person people. They leave, it's now, if you have Xyy, it's just a 1-person people. I still think about people, just none of them are here right now. That's just how it thinks. And therefore, what, why, where are they? What are they doing? Are they doing it well? Are they getting along? Is it harmonious? Is it productive? Does it fit with the way the people do it? So you can see this has a very directive nature, so that can be very oppressive, but it also is very impressive. It is very compelling. It causes people to strive in ways they wouldn't if they didn't recognize there was a structured ladder of human conduct that you could kind of rise up. Just like you can do Xyy things, and if you do 100 of such and such, it puts you at this rank. With Xyy, there's certain conduct choices, certain ritual choices, and if you do those, you get to go up the hero ladder, so to speak. So that goes just on the social awareness, personal consideration is, on that door analogy, when I see the person looking at whatever, I'm aware of that. And I'm aware of whether or not I am 10 feet away or 100 yards away. I'm aware of, do they look like a person who would want to be given help on that? Because there's also not just the distance. Some people look like, and if you have Xyy, and the better developed you are, the more you can do this, you can sense timers in people. I look at someone who's looking confused. That person looks like the kind of person that they would want to be confused for maybe a minute or more before they would accept the help from someone outside. That person will consider that intrusive. Xyy's very good at noticing, the way Xyy does like their authenticness, Xyy is very much about the operating system. Xyy actually is a power that helps a great deal, for example, emoji reading. Xyy does too, but in a different way, in a more amorphous tonal way. This in a character role way. The Xyy sort of looks at them, sees where they're operating, kind of defines what kind of creature it is, what role is it playing, and therefore what's it likely to do, what's its story. And that's, Xyy is very much about, like, there's all these, and this gets into why Xyy and Xyy talk to one another. There's all these Xyy individuals, but when they do various things, that puts them into certain roles within a story. Does that make sense? So, for example, you were to learn about a character in a story or acting, you would need to know about their Xyy. What do they care about? What's important to them, etc., etc. But also you have to know their Xyy. What is the way of their people? How do they believe things should be done? What Xyy dynamics do they accept? Do they accept that they have to go to certain events for family? Or do they not accept that? Does that make sense? So there's no separation between Xyy and Xyy, really. except in where they activate in the brain, but they're talking to each other on that channel the whole time. So, persuasive charming. That gives also a signal of caring, because, as noted, the person dropped their groceries, or they're looking in somewhere quizzically, they don't know what's going on. There's a way of asking that as if, do you know what you're doing? You could just ask them, do you know what you're doing? And you can dress it up in many different ways. That would be a typically more Xyy way, because you're actually asking for the logical application of what they're doing here, as opposed to seeing the phenomenon as being more of a person-based phenomenon, and therefore monitoring their mood. This is very much where Xyy and Xyy talk to one another. Monitoring this person's mood is part of doing it. So there's no point in going into a helping lost person with door thing, or even, let's say, helping out, maybe that's more Xyy. Addressing person who is lost in front of door. All directives will notice a phenomenon is occurring and think they need to do something accordingly. But with Xyy, there is going to be the noticing that it is a human phenomenon first and foremost. A human is lost or is confused looking in through a glass door or glass window. And therefore, when you ask them how they're doing or ask what's going on, you need to make sure you don't shut them down more than the current motif, for example, was. You would want to help make them feel more heroic, help make a heroic end to this for them, so that they could feel this ended in a good way, the story ended well, and therefore you feel that you are heroic because you helped have that come about. You aided in that coming about. So charming is just natural because it's easier to figure out what a person is doing. It's also easier to get them to do something if you are playing to their position. And that's what charm basically does. I mean, charm can be used, you think, in a very manipulative way or in a very gallant way, and really it's just what you're using it for. So in its purest sense, charm is presenting something in the most favorable way. So if I'm going to approach someone who looks like they might be lost, I don't want to accentuate that they're lost to them. That heightens it. That's going to cause for more alarm, and they already look not distressed, but they're already a little put out. I want to make sure that my approach interacting with them doesn't put them out anymore. It's immediately seen as an alleviation to their issue. Even with someone who is not in a position where they're put out, they're just in a neutral position. There's a need to lead, therefore, with gifts. This could even be seen as very, but it's seen as if I'm going to try to get someone to move, I should begin, structurally, by presenting a reason why they should move. And that's why it's charming / persuasive. When Xyy begins to interact with someone, it's going to begin with reasons why you should listen to them and reasons why you should move. So, for example, at the door, and this is going to be done in a charming way, but the charm and persuasion are really one thing because it can be very forceful. If you want someone to listen to you in a connective way, you want to highlight things like, oh, noting how they got there, that you are aware, this is the key, this is what's very persuasive, you're aware of the motif that they're currently enacting. Xyy is very good at doing this, so its way of approaching shows that it does understand your situation. And so the way it talks, its arguments, its inspirations, its way of speaking, of articulating itself, of defining things, tends to be relating to the acute relevancy of Xyy. It tends to play to Xyy, we'll get to that more in the filming, but for that reason, that tends to be very persuasive. You tend to look directly at what are they doing and why, and then how can I make that happen or not happen. I might not like them. If I don't like them, I still note though what they're trying to do, what it is they're doing. That's a person who's bringing his family to sit down at a dinner table. That's a person who's getting his family ready to leave a dinner table. That's a person exiting a dinner table to take a time out to go to the bathroom. It looks different than a person who's exiting a dinner table to go take a cell phone call. This sounds funny, but Xyy notices all these kinds of things, and they can be very specific with Vi, or also universal with Nai, but it will relate to that's happening. A person is leaving a table and that changes things. For example, Xyy is very aware that every time a person comes and leaves a table, the bubble changes. It shrinks and expands if the table has 5, 6, or 7 people. It does, it feels different. If you played poker or role playing or anything like that, what if you actually have 4 people playing? Now 6. Whether you know or not, you're all role playing all the time. It's just may not be on everyone's awareness, but it's no different than you're playing some sort of game where everyone's like intensely playing this game, and then all of a sudden you lost a player or two, or a player or two showed up. Or a player showed up that is extra cool or extra not cool. Xyy is going to keenly note that this bubble is shifting and why. That's where it's left brain. It's aware of the when, the why. When so-and-so showed up, the mood changed. Xyy will literally note. Xyy will get gut reaction, but a lot of times it may not know when that happened. It can feel things and not know when that occurrence happened until maybe afterwards they think, oh, I was feeling that during the time. But Xyy, because on the left, like Xyy, it is time aware. It like has like a sort of a clock that notes like, oh, at 8 such and such, the Joneses came over and then such and such happened from there. And literally knows like minutes. And then the mood changed here, and then we went like so-and-so and like so-and-so and so-and-so. And there's a clear understanding of, at least according to what they think they know, of why that happened. And therefore, some things are seen as being extremely good or extremely bad or even moderately so, and that's the level of impetus. But this is where that sense of destiny comes in. There is a feeling that since you can see this, you're aware of this dynamic, that if you are consciously, and this is where Xyy comes in, you are constantly deciding whether or not to play that role. That's very different than Xyy. Xyy is aware of all the roles being played in a given situation and its role within it. And therefore, as things change, it will see a motif of person A makes a joke on person B. And then there is chuckling by persons C and D. And then the 3 that are laughing, but the person who's not laughing is just sitting there. They look at you. This is a motif. All that was motif. Xyy will track that. The person said a comment that was actually going to be funny. Humor. Humor has entered the scene. She notices this. Not like me where it can balance and play on it. It's just noticing someone's playing funny. It's noticing someone's playing funny, someone's playing seductive, someone's playing serious, tragic. It just notices that. So like, oh, Bob's playing that sentence different than he played the last sentence. That has a different tone to it. Okay, so that was a Barb joke. Xyy will notice that, and then it will notice the reactions of the person it said it to and the reactions of those around it. And then they're looking at me, and it's aware the whole time as it's doing this that I am part of this. And so if I laugh or not laugh from the very moment it's happening, this is different. It's not a gut reaction. And this is why Xyy can control its face more in a lot of ways than Xyy. It's tracking the phenomenon and the fact that it is part of that phenomenon at the same time. So it kind of gives a bit of a, it's structured. There's a directive nature to it in choosing and being aware that it's being presented with choices. And that's where the directive decision-making aspect comes in. That's a choice. When this happens, choosing whether to laugh or not, and also because it's aware of it can create beats, beginning, middle, end, and it can interject and add beats or subtract beats from someone else. And this is crucial. Because of that, if it sees a trajectory, this is directive. Both the objective discernments very much do. They track a trajectory of a thing, and then they can decide if they want to help shepherd that trajectory or they don't like it. This is a villainous trajectory. In which case, hey, oh, I already know what's going to happen. When that person said that, because I'm Xyy, not anyone can't do this, but Xyy is very quick to notice this. Why it has an assertive, directive nature. I mean, assertive is more noticed for Xyy, but there's a quick to act nature with Xyy as well. Both of them have that, and that's because it's going do and stops, and that's because that cruel comment is going to make this person feel like this, and then you goofballs will probably laugh because you're not strong enough, yada yada. So I'm just going to stop that trajectory. I'm going to end that dynamics as it's unfolding. I don't approve of it. And again, that's the directive nature. The Xyy users, especially the strong ones, the Nai Xyy, Xyy Nai, Vi Xyy, and the Xyy Vi. If they see what they consider to be incorrect conduct, they're not going to wait till the end of the conduct sequence. They will note the beginning of a conduct sequence and whether or not they approve of that conduct sequence, and then they will act accordingly, because, and this is very different than the more laid-back way of these subjective discernments. That is like a pitch. And Xyy basically is, instead of taking information and then it decides how it's going to resonate and then perhaps summon sacred resources, Xyy is going to launch. It's going to come in and start making plays and moving things. So basically, it sees each of these motif changes as pitches. It's been pitched something. And so for Xyy, there is no environment where you're not being pitched something. So for example, if a Xyy user is not swinging at pitches, they're not being aware of people's moods and behaviors and addressing them and making motions to do that structurally in a directive way, that's their Xyy holding that back. That's important. Xyy and Z have a very forward focus. They're constantly being provoked in the environment, seeing things that tell them these roles are now being played. You have, this is very, it's not fast like say the right brain, but it's very fast in that it can quickly note this is the story happening and I'm playing one of several roles, even if I don't move a muscle. That's important. If I sit here and within my Xyy zone dynamic shift, I'm doing nothing. That's important. I'm always doing nothing. If I'm not acting on that, if I don't have opinion on that, if I'm not taking my conduct and contributing it to the conduct of the collective, then I am doing nothing. Now that's not bad necessarily. I'm choosing not to take that pitch. For example, I walk by, I see a person do the thing, and I'm gonna wave it off. I wave that pitch off. I don't want to take it. But it will keep hitting. That awareness does not ever go away, and that's why there's a caring of that, and that's why Xyy needs to be okay with and to control and to shepherd and protect a good bubble so it approves of what's going on there, because its heroic nature is understood by how it's going. Because for a Xyy user anyway, a strong Xyy user, if it was doing its job, that's crucial. If it was doing its job, its people should be heroic. That's a foundational. Xyy should be, as a collective, heroic, and if it's not, then that's somehow my fault. I am not in the right position to people. I have not, perhaps, shown the strength of my positions on things enough to people within the collective to get them to change. Perhaps I should not be a part of these people anymore. Perhaps I should go and be part of other people or make my own people. But that's the core of Xyy, is what are these people I'm a member of? Because it's important. It's very important to be authentic. That's crucial too. A person is measured a great deal by their authentic positions on things. But they're also measured a great deal by the company they keep. And this does not have to be a lot of company. Like for myself, I don't like to keep a lot of people around me. I'm a subjective mojo, a Nai Xyy. But it's very important to me, the character of those around me. Because I'm a heroic person, I like to think of myself as, and so I need to be around a heroic people. Because that's what a hero would do. A hero would either be by themselves, or they would hang with heroes. Does that kind of make sense? So you can think of Xyy that way. They're both sides of the equation. When to stand by your own convictions and so forth, and also choosing the right kind of people that go with those convictions. So I'll just go through here pretty fast. I've actually done a lot of this just sort of jumping around, but I'll go through the power flows. So persuasive charming, we did that. Culture and tribal dynamics. I'll just highlight that there's culture and tribal dynamics, which is a way things are done that inform on that. For example, perhaps I'm out and about and the thing that's happening is transpiring in a more public venue. In a more public area, a Xyy may defer in its discernment, because there's a lot of variation, nuance to it. It may defer to the way it's done in this city. Maybe you're in Tokyo, maybe you're in Paris, maybe you're, I don't know what it is, but a phenomenon happens, and because it's more of a public area with lots of people around, you would go with what is the correct way to do this for this area. As opposed to, you also have crew and interpersonal dynamics. This is more people you know personally. This is your family, colleagues at work that you work tightly with, lovers, mentors, mentees. So then the question is what is the dynamic of our relationship? So person, you guys come home, you're feeling sick, or you're feeling great, or you're feeling antsy, or you're feeling kind of low speed, not want to wear slippers. That fits into a dynamic that we already have. Does that make sense? There's a dynamic that's already in place. So that means, oh, that kind of says where in all of the dynamics we are. It gives a location, in a way, within these Xyy dynamics. Then integrity and code of conduct. So this relates to both those dynamics at the larger cultural scale and also at the more intimate, interpersonal and crew scale. Is why do I choose which ones? Because, for example, you could use Xyy not only to note that joke being made that put person B down. I can make that joke. That's important. The reason why I can see that happening and I can understand that unfolding is because I have the powers to both see that structure, break that structure, and make that structure. So when you're seeing all these roles being presented, you are choosing which one to play, and it is those choices that define the integrity. Because Xyy is going to be aware of what you could do to another human to change their mood. That's a vast power. What it would take to make them feel more friendly towards you, to make them cry, to make them scared, to make them feel confident when to jump off that next challenge that they really can do but are scared. Xyy has the power to do all those things. So it's very important that they be strongly in touch with integrity and code of conduct, that they know that all these roles are theirs so they can understand the role of themselves and everyone else and the choices that are available, and then realize with great power comes great responsibility, and they need to choose the best roles, and they need to find the roles that are most natural and most heroic for everyone else. That's what Xyy should be doing, and then the full power and ability of Xyy will be there. Team building, shepherding, that basically is Xyy is going to have a great, again, distinct signal of caring, because getting things done, in the one instance, was just helping a person out. But actually, if I was going to get something done, those who have Xyy on a strong side, and Xyy conscious users, period, is there is strength in not just numbers of people, but more importantly, in the cohesion, the loyalty, the camaraderie, the commitment, and the love between them. When that's there, those people can do tremendous things. So you want to build teams and shepherd that goodwill, that camaraderie, that trust, because that's incredibly powerful. It can make 10 people infinitely more powerful than 1,000 people if those 10 people are united and are friendly and honorable and trust one another and give to one another and build each other up. Then of course rituals, collective values, etiquette, diplomacy. That basically means that when you're making these calls, because you realize there is a sequence happening, that means there's kind of like a dance move happening. If you were to come in and help a dance partner out, you'd want to show that you know how the dance is done, otherwise you might trip them up because you came in off beat. So if I'm going to help a person out, as simple as it sounds, I wait for a pause. You wait for pause in conversation, regardless of what you're going to say, you wait for those kind of moments, because that shows that you gave consideration of how it was given to the person, and they go, oh, and it makes them more aware that you were aware of them. And that feels good, and therefore they're going to be hopefully in a more heroic position inside and come at you that way. That should be the way Xyy is used. That is the higher calling and the way it was designed to be used. Although it can be used, the caring, in a very, I care that you don't be here anymore because I care that you're making it toxic. Or I care that you don't come up to our gate because I care that you're untrustworthy around innocent people. So the caring can be, we've also mentioned the flex factor. I'll just highlight that because most of them we already have, but the flex factor of Xyy is that Xyy can be very, very deferential, and then also can actually have an aggressive side to it as well, because it's trying to get something done, but it's doing it in the most diplomatic way it can, but sometimes some things must be done, and the caring of it getting done will supersede the diplomacy, and that's where the flex will happen. Great efforts will be exerted to use the etiquette diplomacy to make it happen, but if not, the caring won't change, and then it can go into aggressive or forcefulness. And this is one, real quick, going into the things such as the counterbalances, which are shades of a distinct signal. Passionate versus volatile. This has a lot to do with whether or not the people agree with the Xyy dynamics and the roles you're playing, and they agree with how you change them. If they don't, they'll consider it not passionate but volatile because they don't understand why a person is changing their caring, why the caring went from a relaxed, cozy caring to a Xyy drive, we need to get out of here caring. That's caring too. That's caring like we're in danger. And so if people don't know where it's coming from, it can come off as volatile. So it's important to explain itself. Loyal and clannish. Obviously it cares about its people, so it's loyal towards them. That can come off loyal a lot. It can also seem to some people as clannish because there is a greater caring for the people component than perhaps the technical or proficiency component. So Xyy users, for example, would see it as very, maybe overly caring, but it is a caring about that component because there's 8 things happening at any time, and Xyy cares about the state of the people. It's the most important thing. Then compelling and manipulative. Again, with the Xyy, because Xyy cares about how the individuals are doing things, it relates to itself and the rest of the people. Xyy naturally is aware, as mentioned, of a sequence beginning and unfolding. It also can it can create those sequences, and it can string those sequences along to create a road to a place. Xyy and Xyy are both very good at stringing together articulations, definitions, arguments, positions, so that you make roads that go places, sometimes through places. So they can be very forceful, both the Xyy and the Xyy. But the Xyy will try to go what's considered classically a win-win, because it'll want to move forward while keeping as many of the people happy, healthy, harmonious as possible, and feeling heroic. Sometimes it does mean going through things and doing very challenging things and being forceful as needed, but that's as needed to keep the productive harmony. The compelling manipulative part comes into that because that's a very effective way to get people to do a thing. To come at them and give them a persuasive argument that goes 1, 2, 3, and then realize that's a sequence and that you could layer another sequence and keep going. It's kind of like a video game where you have like the triple 32, 64 length combos, and when a combo goes that long, you have what's called a combo breaker. If a person knows enough strings of combos, they can literally combo you, like the fight goes 90 seconds, they can combo you from the beginning of the match and just keep comboing you the entire way, the experts. And this is what Xyy and Xyy do. This is why you have to check them with Xyy and Xyy. You have to break the combo. In the fighting game, if a person just keeps hitting the buttons, they can just keep doing it to you the entire way and hit you with like 90 strikes in a row and get like an amazing score on you. You have to do a sequence of buttons that does something like this, and it will stop their combo. It like makes them, and they break, and the combo stops, and of course can begin it again. That creating and continuing of combos, of sequences, is something that the objective discernment powers are the masters of. So if they get it going, there can be a feeling that they kind of have you on rails. The upside is, if people need to go a certain way and they're being a bit complacent, then Xyy is awesome. Xyy is a great power to get humans to do things they should do, but they just are feeling scared or lazy or lost. The Xyy will say, we can do it, and let's go do it, and we have to do it because, hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but we're the fucking people. Who else is going to do it, right? I mean, we're the people made up of individual heroes. If this people, which I'm a member of, and the people in it aren't individual heroes, how is it going to happen? Because basically, the way the objective discerners see things is you have the Xyy and the Xyy, and that's making everything happen. So if we don't grab a hold of that with both hands, how are we going to survive in this world, people? How are we going to get by? That'd be silly. Anyway, that's awesome. However, if you don't agree with the path that you're being taken on, it can feel a bit manipulative. Because similar to the way it likes to go for a win-win, Xyy will take the approach of playing to aspects of what it's saying that are most favorable to you, because it wants you to see the good of its position. Xyy is going to want you to see the strength of its position. The Xyy wants to do good. It wants to do good. It wants the people to do good. It wants you to do good. It wants to explain to you how you could do good. You'll be good, don't you? Okay? Don't we all be good? And see right there? Guilt. You want to be good, don't you? You don't want to be bad. Okay, so Xyy can lay the guilt on pretty hard there, and there's an upside. I mean, sometimes, what if you are, kind of being unheroic? You need to hear, is that the kind of people we are? Is that the kind of person you want to be? Okay, you gotta hear that, so that's necessary. Other times when you're just necessarily eating food in a certain way that's pleasing to you and it's really not a problem, maybe someone else has a, that's not how people do it. And you're like, well, it's not a big deal. It makes you a bad person. And she will say that with a straight face, it makes you a bad person that you open a door that way, that you eat food that way, that you start or end sentences that way. So it's important that Xyy users understand the agenda that is behind their pushing, and they understand how that pushing affects all the other powers, because the objective discernment powers, Xyy and Xyy, are the most impactful of all the powers. They are the dynamics movers because they care. And because they care, they have evolved to affect the thing they care about. And because they're noticing moving sequences, action sequences, motif sequences, they're very proactive. They're proactive about agreeing or disagreeing with sequences that are even thinking about beginning. So thinking about beginning, starting, or happening on them, they will agree or disagree, and they have to, because if not, the people will be affected, and what do? And see, that's Xyy. Xyy has very action-oriented. It doesn't want to do nothing. It doesn't want the person that saw various motifs, and it could have been made more heroic or less villainous, and they did nothing. Don't be that person. So that's why we care. Xyy. Xyy and Xyy users, and Xyy in everyone's psyche, because it's those decisions that define if you're a hero or not. It's seeing sequences unfold and deciding if you agree with them, if you think they fit with your view of the way people should do a thing, and then acting accordingly.